All right, guess what? It is the top of the hour, 10 o'clock on the West Coast and 7 p.m. in Austria right now. So we're going to get this meetup started for today. It is Thursday, June 5th, and we're looking forward to having Laura show us some great stuff about data visualization. But before we do that, as usual, we're going to go through and do the standard thanking of our sponsors here. This meetup, along with every meetup that we run through VanPug, is sponsored by SkillWave, which is my training platform where we teach you how to build amazing things with Excel and Power BI. If you haven't checked out your course or courses in this catalog, you should definitely go and do so. Excel Guru is the parent company of SkillWave and also the company that is responsible for creating and distributing Monkey Tools, which is my add-in to help you build better data models and Excel files faster. Our next meetups that we have coming up in a couple of weeks, we've got Helen Wall is going to be joining us to talk about exploring color theory. So a little bit more on the visual side of things we have going on here. So that should be a great session. And then in a month, we've got Lee Becker that's going to be talking about Excel quick tips, not a formula in sight. Do note on this one here that while Helen's session is going to be starting at 9 a.m. Pacific time, Lee's is going to be starting at 1 p.m. Pacific time, a little bit later in the day there, just to be aware. Of course, these are always recorded as well, but the RSVPs are open, so make sure that you RSVP to come to both of these great sessions. Monkey Tools, what's new? I actually published a new build of Monkey Tools last night. As a matter of fact, I published 2. And the important thing to know about this build is that it will go with a 1.0, and then there's a 9286. That is the day stamp for publishing. But you want to make sure, in order to get these features, the good ones, that you're actually on the very last version here of 28970. I actually had to publish a very quick bug fix that I realized after I did my first publish. So what have we added to it? We fixed the tab orders in the BiblioMonkey. I got some comments from somebody saying the tab orders are completely illogical. Ken, why are you doing this? So I thought, that's a good point. I should fix those. And the other thing is we had a user request for something that has been long overdue that I've now added. So inside the BiblioMonkey, you can now drag and drop your items to reorder them. I've got a second here. There we go. I had an extra hot mic going on there. So we have drag and drop inside BiblioMonkey, so you can reorder items, you can drop them into folders and things like that, which makes it a lot easier than trying to have to right click and choose to move things up one at a time. So that's a nice little improvement. And naturally, of course, there's always bug fixes that have gone into this thing as well. So that is what's new in Monkey Tools for right now. I got a couple of other things that I'm looking to work on as well. If you or somebody on your team needs to get some good fundamental training in Excel, making sure that our formula game is good, understands pivot tables, some core data visualization skills and Power Query, don't forget to check out my Excel Fundamentals Academy. Fantastic training program, gives about 30 hours of training and coaching, and also has access to my live Ask Ken Anything sessions, which I host twice a month. Fantastic sessions, and really, really good engagement there from the people that I have inside these academies to ask basically anything and get solutions built for them, which is pretty cool stuff. If you are past that kind of stuff, your pivot tables, you may want to check out my Self-Service BI Academy. This is my flagship training product. We talk about Power Query, we talk about Power Pivot, DAX measures, Power BI. There are all kinds of good stuff in here. You get access to my books, you get access to Monkey Tools, Power Query recipes, all kinds of things happening in this. But the most important part of this academy, as I say, is not necessarily just the curriculum and the pieces you get, but it is access into those Ask Ken Anything sessions where we really dive deep into helping people apply the techniques to their own scenarios. And like I say, there are 2-hour meetings that happen, twice a month. So there's tons of almost free consulting time, if you like, that goes with these products. So we're all about the coaching here and making sure people actually understand what they're doing. If you haven't checked it out, please go and do so at the SkillWave site. This meetup, along with all meetups, is recorded and will be posted onto the SkillWave YouTube channel. As soon as it is posted, we will post in the meetup group to let you know. If you're not subscribed to the channel, of course, already, which naturally you should be, but there you go. Be aware, it does take me about 24 to 48 hours to get the recordings edited and posted. But as I say, we do post once they're ready to go. The semi-last thing I want to say is that if you would like to come and speak to our meetup group here, we are always excited to be welcoming new speakers and show the diversity of things that are happening in the Excel and Power Platform space. We would love to hear from you. Just fill out this little form here. We'll get in touch with you and get you on our stage. And now it is my great pleasure to exit stage left here, and we're going to turn it over to Laura, and she is going to be talking about the secrets behind the graph, understanding the tricks to master any chart in Excel. And let me just make sure, Laura, because I muted everything everybody here. Let me unmute you so that we can actually hear from you. Hang on a second. Why can't I not? Let me just make you a presenter. Actually, that's going to be the easiest way because that's going to work better to share your screen. Yep, it's working now. And now you're a presenter. You should be able to share your screen. So I'm going to stop sharing here. And
just a second before we start. So okay, I shared my screen. I hope
perfect.
It works.
I can see it. Yep.
Okay. So first of all, thank you and welcome everyone. I'm very glad to see that there's so much interest in my session. In case you just joined in the last few minutes, I would love to know where you're from. So just drop in the chat from which country you joined us. We had a few people from Italy and Canada already, and I'm very curious about the rest of you. Just a few informations about me. My name is Laura. I'm super happy to be here and thank you again for the opportunity. I'm an Excel trainer and consultant. I have been working as a consultant for a few years and I'm still doing trainings in Excel around like 3 years, since 3 years. And I absolutely adore Excel. That's why I'm presenting to you one of my favorite topics in data visualizations, that is the workarounds. Before we start, I can see US, Milan, nice, USA, hi everyone, New Zealand, Czech Republic. That's great to see so many different countries. I am based in Austria, in Vienna, but originally I'm from Hungary. So a few weeks ago, there was an Excel meetup in Milan, Italy, and I met a lot of people there and it was really amazing. And that was kind of what inspired me to come up with some very cool examples for our session today. The workbooks are already shared with you, but just in case you don't have them, just drop a message in the chat and I can put the workbooks below, but I will also share them after the session. So in case you have any questions regarding any charts or something that you just maybe even after the session, you can contact me on LinkedIn. And I also have a newsletter in case you want to join and get some updates around the data visualization topics in Excel. So, I can see Toronto, Mexico. Hi, everyone. Very cool countries. So if we're talking about data visualization in Excel or Power BI, I just want to show you a few pictures what I Googled today. So if you Google Power BI dashboard or Excel dashboard, there are actually not huge differences in the results, right? Because people usually say, oh, Excel dashboards and Excel visualizations are very ugly if you compare them to Power BI or Tableau or any other tools. But my mission is to kind of change that because it's not about the tools that we use, but about the skills. So if you see something very great and you just don't know how to do it in Excel, I'm like 90% sure there is a way, there is a workaround. We can also do many great visualizations in Excel. We just have to know the way to the solutions, right? And if we're talking about dashboards in Excel, they could be ugly, they could be nice, but it's all dependent on the person who's creating those dashboards. So in today's sessions, I will show you a few of my favorite workarounds on how to create charts that are maybe not so easy in Excel. Before we start, a few key points. As I said, there are many workarounds in Excel, not just regarding visualizations, but also regarding function and everything. There is usually not just one way how we can get to the solution, but many ways. I collected a few of my favorite things and a few of the things that I use generally and very often in projects. But if there's anything else that you would like to know, just drop the message on LinkedIn and I'm happy to help you with that. The second topic, very important, is if you build something, a chart or like any kind of Excel solution, make sure that you try to build it dynamic. That means usually the question that we need to ask ourselves is, if we're building something, that is there a chance that the data will be changed maybe next week or next month? Because the probability is pretty high that once I've created something, the data will be changed, right? So that's why I prefer to use and work with dynamic array functions as well. And you will see that I use a lot in my workbooks. And that is a very important topic, because I used like very new functions and very new features from Microsoft that has been rolled out maybe only last year. For example, the picture in cell and the dynamic array solutions have been around for a few years. So if you use an older version in Excel and there are solutions or there are charts that don't work with your Excel, just drop me a message and I will make sure that I found the solution that is appropriate for your Excel version as well. And generally, one tip, if you're building charts in Excel and you're not sure how to do it because maybe you saw something cool at a Power BI or somewhere else, is try to take it into parts. So I'm going to talk about this trick a little bit later as well. But what for me is very helpful is to try to do it brick by brick. So first of all, what is the basic thing that I can already create in Excel? And then I try to build up on top of it. And maybe it needs a lot of workarounds, but at the end of the day, there is always a solution. So with that, I will start with our examples. So if you're following around with the workbooks, I'm going to open day 2 examples. Okay, as I mentioned, we're going to take a trip to Italy. And in this case, I prepared a lot of charts around food. So I hope you're hungry, because latest after the session, I'm sure that you will be hungry as well. I spent a few days there and we started with a dinner. So what I'm going to show you here is not basically not a chart, but I think it's also a very cool workaround to create something very fun in Excel. Most of my examples that I'm going to show you soon are maybe not business charts, but if you understand the workarounds and the idea behind it, then you can just really put those tricks into your workflow and make really cool charts in Excel. So if we're creating a dinner for 2, I can use these checkboxes to build up everything that I want to, right? The first one would be the table. Then I have to get the drinks, then the food. I need some candles to make a very nice table setup. And as a last step, if I want to take the lights off, I can just use the checkbox for it. So you see, this is a really fun example that's just to show you how versatile Excel is, especially with the new checkboxes. If you combine them with some new techniques, you can create very cool visual effects. So, slicing the dessert. I'm going to show a few basic examples, and then we are going to go into detailed and more complex solutions in the end. If we're talking about charts, it's very important, as with everything in Excel, that you make a solution that is dynamic, so that if I change the data, the chart has to be updated. Like the most basic thing is, how can I create a very interactive chart when I use slicers? So as a first step, I like to use Excel tables for the database. I think that's like the easiest and best solutions. And if you create the chart directly from the table, you can just go to the insert, have a slicer, then select a column that you want to use, and then you can create a very easy slicer here. And based on my selection, the chart will be updated automatically. I think that's a pretty basic trick, and we're going to build on top of it. If you want to take this to another level, to make your chart a little bit maybe more interactive, instead of using the whole table, you can just use parts of this table. So I created another cell with a drop down, and I can select one of the 4 desserts, right? Gelato, tiramisu, and the 2 rest. And based on this selection, with the help of XLOOKUP, I just copied basically, I extracted the values from the table. So if I create a chart directly only from this one row, based on my selection on the drop-down, the chart will be changed as well. That's just the next level of interactivity when working with charts. Now, we're going to jump right into our first workaround, an error on purpose. So basically, when you see an error in Excel, usually you freak out, right? We don't want to see errors unless we're working with charts because they are very, very useful. I'm going to use the NA function, which is basically creating an error. And if we combine that with an if function, we can create something very cool. Let's take the example that I want to highlight, either the minimum or the maximum of a chart. So in our case, we have the 4 parts of this chart, and I just want to highlight which is the highest value, right? And in our case, that would be the city row. So what I can do is the following. I create an if function, and if the maximum is the same that the value for the city, then I want to see the value. Otherwise, I just want to see this error message more or less, or this NA function. Now you could say, why don't we just use the 0 for the rest? If I want to create a chart which only shows the maximum value, I could just say, if you scroll down, you will see the other chart. I could just say, okay, let's use 0 for the rest. And just there's one tiny difference between using this error or this NA value and 0 values. And that is if you add data labels. So if you click on the chart and then on the plus sign just next to it, you can add data labels. And as you can see, only one data label will appear on this chart with the right chart. If you scroll down and try it with the zeros, if I add data labels, they will appear on every city. Even if the value is 0, they will be there. And that's actually one of the only reasons why I use the NA, because I don't want to see the data label if the chart has a value of 0. So that's why I use with the if function, that's why I combine the if function with the NA. Now, if we're taking to the next level, we want to create a solution that is kind of combining one of the charts. So what can we do here? And I will change to the worksheet, the dessert. I call this the tiramisu layering or the tiramisu effect, but it also works with lasagna if you'll see what I mean. So if we have a tiramisu, it has more layers, right? And if I'm looking at a tiramisu from the top of it, I only see the layer with the cocoa powder or coffee powder based on how you create those tiramisus. But in reality, there are more layers down there. We just don't see it. And we can actually use these layers in Excel too. On the right side, I have 2 charts. And I could actually just put beside this chart, which has only the maximum value, on top of the other one. And that's one way how I can actually highlight the maximum. Now we're going to do it in a much nicer way, but basically that's the idea. We're going to layer charts on top of each other. And then we will see, like with the tiramisu, if you look at it from the upper side, you see first the top layer and then the layers down there too. How does this work with Excel? So on the right side, I actually already copy-pasted the maximum charts in the pink one, but if you don't have it, let me just show you a really cool trick. So if you have these 2 different values, 2 different rows, right? One has all of the values, the other one on the down part only has the maximum value. If you click on the red one and use the shortcut Ctrl+C and Ctrl+V, then Excel automatically copies and pastes the new chart in the old one. Now the problem is that they are standing next to each other, and that's not really what we want. So I have to jump in the settings, in the options. So I'm going to click on the right with my right click on my mouse, go to Format Data Series, and basically if you want to change something with charts, a lot of workarounds will be with this sign, with these three mini charts. And there is an option, series overlap. If I change it to 100%, that means that the two series, the pink and the red one, will be layered on top of each other, which means the red is above and the pink is under it. So just like with the tiramisu, we have now two layers. And if I'm looking at the chart, actually, I don't see the pink in case the Rome is the maximum. I only see that it's red. So this is a very easy and effective way to highlight either minimum or maximum values with charts. If we take this to the next level, we can also add data labels. So in our next example, I added data values and I used, again, the if function to only display it for the maximum value because I don't want it for the other charts. So I created an if, I used the if function to only display it for the highest value. Now, a really cool fun fact is if you use emojis, you can use the shortcut Windows and dot and put them into cells. They will be always black and white. But as soon as you put these emojis in charts, they will be colorful. So if you just add here a data label and you just add it to the maximum, to the red chart, then it will be displayed only for the maximum value. And again, you can use here this small trick that you change the series overlap to 100%, and then the result will be more or less the same. If you have any questions, because this was really just the basic, then let me know. I am looking at the chat, so I will try to see and really focus on the chat too. Now we're going to change to spaghetti charts. And in this case, I made a literal spaghetti chart in Excel. The cool thing about this is that if you select another city from the slicer, you will always see that one of the cities, one of the spaghettis, will be highlighted with red. This is actually based on the same workaround as the minimum maximum because we have two charts layered on top of each other. I have the normal spaghetti ones and then I have the red spaghetti, and the red spaghetti is just a layer above the normal spaghetti ones. My idea was to connect it with the slicer so that it's very dynamic. And for that, I created a table. Let me just get rid of this slicer. Yes. So I created a table with some IDs and the 4 cities. And then I used the function subtotal to be only displayed. Basically, you can use either aggregate or subtotal. But if I use my slicer, the subtotal will just give me the result, which one is visible from the cells in this table. Based on the slicer, I will always see what the result is. And then I can use this information to create a new column for the red spaghetti. So if I know that I selected, for example, Milan from the slicer, I can use either the indirect function or the XLOOKUP function to just go and look for the values for this particular city. And if I know the values for this city, I can just use this as a second chart, as a second line chart, make sure that the color is red, and then layer it on top of the other chart. So basically, I'm using here a combo chart with 2 default line charts. If there is any questions, just drop into the chat. But basically, that's the idea. And as a last step, I also made sure that the data label is also updating all the time when I select a new information from the slicer. So if you connect everything with each other, it will be a super dynamic chart, which is also interactive. And I really love this solution because it gives you the freedom to display any type of the chart, not just the minimum or the maximum. It's very flexible. Now, I'm going to show you one of my favorite things that has been around in Excel, not for long, but it's really one of the major updates that I love. Like Microsoft is very focusing on AI, and there is so much new things like Python and everything. And when it comes to data visualization and charts, I have the feeling that there are not many updates. But this one is really a game changer. This is the picture in cell, and it's just so much fun because you can put pictures in cells. And if you would think, why would I ever want to put a very big picture in a small cell because I can see it, there's an answer for it. Because we can create references and we can use these pictures in functions. So I will clear the filter so that we see what's going on. In our data, I have a few cities. I have a helper column, again with the subtotal function. And then I put some pictures from these 4 cities directly into the cell. Now, I use the slicer again so that the user can select one city. And based on which city is selected here, I created some cells with the help of some functions, XLOOKUP and maximum, so that I know which city is selected. Now, using the XLOOKUP, I can just also have a reference directly from the picture so that I know if Bologna, for example, or Milan is selected, I want to see that picture in the cell. And as a next step, you can just right-click on this picture, go to Picture in Cell, and create reference. And in the moment that you do this, this picture will be connected to the cell. But if you have a function in the cell like XLOOKUP, index match, or any type of function, the picture will maybe change. So the reference, the big picture, will be changed too. And I think that's a really, really cool and interactive way to make dashboards a little bit exciting and more colorful. As you see, based on my selection in the slicer, we see a picture from the city. So if we combine a few things that I just showed you from the workarounds, we can create a super dynamic and super interactive solution. The reference, that's actually a very good question, Ken. I haven't tried it with Excel online. Usually I work with Excel offline, so I have to check if that's working online.
No worries. I'm just curious, right? I mean, it's one of those things that I agree. I mean, real work is done in Excel on desktop, but more and more as they start to push towards the Excel online, I'm always curious, like, does it work? Can you make it work with pivot charts? Can you make it work in the Excel online environment? But I'll have to try it offline and see.
Yeah, but it's a good question. I think it should work, but I haven't tried it to work. So for the next example, I combined actually a few things, right? So again, I use a slicer to make a selection between the different cities. Then I use picture in cell to be able to display the city, like the picture of the city on the right side. So if I change it, the city will be updated, the picture on the right side. And at the same time, this chart will be updated too. So based on the selection, we will see that one of these data, like one of these charts, will be updated with another color, and also the ice cream will get a scone. Now, I know this is a very fun example, at least for me, fun. I really enjoyed making this example. But if you put this into business perspective, and if you translate the things that you learn here, this could be a really, really cool and interactive chart as well. What did I do actually? So first of all, on the right side, we have the picture in cell. That's one part of this whole chart. And then in the middle, actually, again, I combined the solution from the spaghetti chart, so like layering more charts on top of each other. The only difference is that in this case, I tried to look for two pictures that are very, very similar. They just have different colors. So if I select, for example, Milan, again, the same solution, that the pink is above the black and white chart, and it just kind of looks like that the scoops are all colored up. And for the waffle, it's actually a second chart. So let me just click on it and then it's more visible. This is a second chart that only has one value, and it will only be changed for the position if the city is selected. So you see, if I select Rome, there is one value here that will be 10. All the others are zeros. If I select Milan, Milan will be 10, and all of the others will be zeros. And this is exactly what I use for the chart. If there is a 10 there, then I wanted to see the picture. In every other way, there is just a 0, so there is nothing to be displayed. And then I just put the picture directly into the chart and made sure that the two charts, the two parts of the ice cream, are perfectly aligned under each other. So you see, based on how you use these workarounds together, you can create so many interesting and new charts. There are endless possibilities within Excel. So for the next workaround, we're going to create some KPIs, because especially if we talk about Power BI, like we don't have conditional formatting in Excel for charts, right? Now I showed you a few workarounds on how to do that, but in Power BI, like basically these things are maybe more simple and more easy for the users. Now, one key thing that is very basic in Power BI is the KPI, like KPI cards, and we don't have them in Excel, right? Good thing is we can do, again, a few workarounds to be able to create really cool KPI cards. For that, first, I'm going to show you how to create a dynamic title for your charts. So I have now the same charts that we used before to be able to highlight one of the desserts or like the maximum value. If I click on the chart and if I select the title, I need to go to the formula bar, type in the equal sign, and if I click on the cell, on any cell, I can basically link this text box, the title from the chart, to a cell. Now, very important thing is, it's just really something small, but basically you could think, oh, I could use functions in the formula bars, even if I connect this to a text box. The problem is, as soon as you want to use formulas or functions, there will be an error message from Excel. So formulas and functions will not be working here, but what you can do is you can always connect the text box to a specific cell, and then in that cell, you can use a function. So if I change with the drop-down which kind of dessert I have, the cell will be changed as well. And since the cell is connected to the chart now, everything will be updated automatically. I think this is a very, very cool small little trick as well. Now, if we take this to the next level, we can create a KPI card. So if you try it out and then you use the slicer, you see that everything gets updated automatically. And it kind of looks like it goes in the direction of Power BI lookalike KPI cards, right? What did I do here actually? Now this group consists of more things. First of all, I used the picture in cell trick that I showed you before to be able to display the dessert. So if I click on gelato, I will see the ice creams. If I click on tiramisu, I will see the other picture in cell. Now, for the we sold and this year, for some parts of the text, I just use the text box. And for the number here, I also use the text box that I just connected to a cell. So the same small trick that I used here with the chart, I also use the same one here with the KPI. Basically, you can insert either a new text box or even a new shape and then connect it to an existing cell. And as the last part, you just need to make sure that this text box or shape is formatted correctly. So I would suggest to get rid of the line and also the filling. And then if you make it a little bit bigger, then it's already looking much, much better. Now, the interesting part, or maybe a little bit more difficult, is here in the middle. Based on if the numbers are positive, they should be green, and if they are negative, they should be red. I used two small tricks here. First of all, I used picture in cell, and I put some negative signs, like stop signs, as for the negative numbers, and then I did the same one for the positive numbers, but only with green. So if we have these two pictures in the cell, I created another cell and used the if function to be able to decide if the sign to be displayed should be red or green. And then in the last step, I can right click on the cell, say picture in cell, and then I create a reference. And then I can easily drag and drop this reference picture on the KPI card. And as for the text, just next to it with the numbers, I used the cell and I created, with a little bit of workarounds, just a small connection between the text. So we have here the number, some space between it, and the percentage of the change from last year. Now, if you use conditional formatting, you can also easily change the color. So if it's a positive number, it should be green. If it's a negative number, it should be red. And in the last step, I use the camera tool to have a snapshot from this cell. So just in case you don't have the camera tool anywhere in your Excel workbook, you can just go to the, just let me put this on the right side. So you can use the quick access toolbar, go to the more commands, and then add the camera tool to the quick access. And if you click on the cell and use the camera tool, you will create a dynamic and live screenshot from a cell. Now, the only thing that you have to be careful is a little bit, or to make sure that it's displayed nicely, is the same thing as with the text boxes. Make sure that there are no lines and no fillings so that it will be really transparent. And then based on where you display it, where you place it, this will also look very, very nice for the KPI card. And if you put all these parts together, make it dynamic, then based on the slicer, you have a fully functioning KPI card. Okay, I see that the camera tool is not supported Excel. That's a shame. That's really, really sad. I hope maybe it will get fixed at some point. But in any case, the camera tool works very well offline. So in case you're interested in more KPI examples, there are a few ways. I put a few of my favorite inspirations from LinkedIn. So if you are looking for some new ideas, you can check out these resources. And one more example from this workbook. So in the beginning, I showed you the first example where we prepared the dinner for two, right? Now, if you try this example, the DIY pizza, you can create your own pizza based on what your favorite is. So if you pick some toppings like cheese, mushroom, olives, tomatoes, this will be all displayed on the pizza below, right? In case you're interested in how I did that, I actually have all the tables and calculations here. I used the picture in cell, and I made sure that if the checkbox is activated, then the corresponding picture should appear in the cell. And then in the last step, if you use picture in cell and create reference, for example, this cheese will be only displayed if I activate the checkbox. It's actually just these two steps. Very easy, very straightforward. You just have to know that the picture in cell works very well with XLOOKUP and any kind of functions. And as the last step, you just need to create a reference. Now, I already see that it's 40, so are there any questions so far?
I don't think we have any questions stacked up in the chat, no.
Cool. Then I will jump to the navigation. So just to go back quickly to the text box topic, I've showed you that you can create a dynamic chart title. And I also showed you how to create a KPI card. Like basically we're just connecting text boxes to cells. Now there is one other cool thing that you can do with text boxes, and that is to use them for navigation. I'm going to open the 2.1 navigation workbook, and I have here a very, very small dashboard, more or less. Based on what I click here, oh, I shouldn't have changed the zoom settings. So based on what I click on here, I can see different dashboards. Now, the only problem is that on the tabs are still displayed. Like I wanted to show you how to change this setting so that this will really look like a super dynamic dashboard and you don't even need the sheet tabs to navigate. So this really has a Power BI feeling in the end. If you click on the file and if you go to the options, advanced, then there is this small checkbox that you can deactivate for the display options for this workbook, and that is the show sheet tabs. If you deactivate it, then the sheet tabs are gone, and now your only way to navigate between the tabs will be these buttons that I created. But these are actually not buttons. It doesn't have any VBA code in the background. I just created and inserted a few shapes like this, made sure that the formatting looks nice. And if you click on it, you can actually link this shape or even a text box to another sheet. So if you go to place in this document, you will see a list of all the sheet tabs that are existing in this workbook, and you can just select another one. And in this way, if you play a little bit with the design, it looks actually like a little bit of a Power BI dashboard. So very, very similar to this one, we can take advantage from this trick and use this to create a dashboard that has dark mode. Like if you haven't used dark mode in Excel, it actually exists. You just need to go and change your settings to the black style from Excel, and then you should have a button here, I think under insert or under home, that says dark mode. Now the problem with dark mode is that it currently is not 100% perfect because the color of the charts is not automatically updated. So if you have a chart with a white background and then you just go select dark mode, everything, the cells will be black, but the chart will stay white. Now, in order to have a workaround to make it look really nice, you can just create two tabs. Say, okay, one is the dark mode, one is the light mode version. Then I inserted a few shapes here. I made sure that I linked them to the other tab. So you can always go link, place in document, and then just look for the sheet tab that you're interested in. And then as a last step, you can again just change in the settings so that you don't see the sheet tabs. And then you will have a really a dashboard that has this really cool setting, changing between light and dark. A cool tip is I like how I did that is I first started with the light mode. I created everything, and then I just copy pasted the same sheet to make sure that the text and everything is at the same place. And then I just recolored the existing text and then the background and then renamed it to dark. I think that is a very good workaround if you want to have that wow effect. And if you're working really fast, it doesn't take more than a few minutes to create this really cool effect. Okay, so I'm just looking at the chat if there are any questions. Oh, if it's a yes, this is not an anti-P, a Power BI presentation. I just want to show you cool workarounds in Excel so that you can make something that resembles Power BI, because Power BI is so beautiful and we can create so amazing dashboards. And I want to show you that it's possible in Excel as well. So, day 3, even more examples. Now we're going to make a little bit more difficult or more complex charts in this case. First of all, I just want to make sure that we're at the same level. So if you didn't know that before, you can create transparent charts or parts of a chart transparent. Like I just have a very basic pie chart here. And if I click on the slices, I can go to Format Data Series. And under the fill, there is this option, no fill. As soon as I click on it, the colors will disappear, right? And then theoretically, I could select only one of the slices and then select a color for that. In this way, only one is colored, everything else is transparent. And if I get rid of the borders for the whole pie chart, let me just make sure that I click on everyone. Exactly. So I got rid of the lines. I made the background transparent and I only changed the filling for one of the slices. And in this case, it looks like we only have one slice, but that is not true. I just made the rest transparent. And this trick with the transparency, you can use in any type of chart. So you can always decide which parts of the chart you want to make transparent. And this is a very cool workaround, and it's actually very commonly used when you're creating new types of charts. In our next example, I'm going to show you some cool tricks, the same trick with a pizza slice. So we have our pizza with 6 slices, and I created a drop down to this cell. So if you select another slice, there is always a different one that will be highlighted and will be kind of filled out with this pizza. Okay, okay, there are no legs. Okay, I'm going to answer to the question a little bit later. So based on what I select here with this drop down, there is always one that has this cool pizza effect. And I use actually more of the workarounds. First of all, there's this layering, which means in this chart, I again have 2 charts, 2 pie charts laid on top of each other. One is the gray one, and the second one on top of it is the pizza one, right? And this pizza consists of 3 parts. There is one slice that is transparent, and there is the middle one that has the pizza effect, let's say the pizza effect, this one, and then again a part that is transparent. Now you have to do some basic calculations to kind of figure this out, but if you look at this cell, I already did that, so you don't have to figure it out on your own. You can just copy paste the solution. Basically, I just looked at the position of the slice. So for example, let's take size 3. I looked at the position of the slice 3, and then I calculated how many slices, how big are the slices that are before the third one. The sum should be 20. Now I made these blue ones transparent. Then for the second part, we need to calculate or just use the XLOOKUP to make sure that we get the value for the pizza slice, which is 10. And in the last part, I calculated the rest of the slices together should equal to 30 and made this part also transparent. So we have the blue parts that are actually transparent, and then we have the pizza slice, which has this cool pizza pattern. So if you combine transparency with layering, you can create very, very, very cool charts. Doesn't matter if it's a bar chart or if it's a column chart or even a pie chart, you can use this in any type of chart. I have a few other examples. So if you want to take a look around, the coffee cup, for example, is very, very similar. I just used a different way, but the idea is the same, that we're layering two charts on top of each other. And now to the swirl ice cream. This is a very cool chart. So we have here, in business context, this would be the butterfly chart, right? You can see it in many, many cases. And I also use them very often because I think they look super cool. Now, on the right side, I have actually the first part of the butterfly chart so that you can see what's going on in the background. What did I do there? First of all, I made sure that I have, for the labels, enough space. Like, I kind of just measured it, how much space I need there. Then we have the two data values, like the vanilla side and the chocolate side. That is given, that is actually our data. And then, and that's the important part for the butterfly chart, I have to make sure that I have two parts, one on the left side and one on the right side, now marked here with pink, and I will make those parts later transparent, so you can see that in the butterfly or the ice cream charts, they are actually there, these parts, they are just transparent. And this is very important if you want to make sure that the data label stays in the middle, because you need to do some calculations to be able to know how big should be these pink parts on the right and on the left. Now, what I did there is actually I just made sure that every row in this table or in this list has the same sum. So the only thing that is flexible is the pink part. The data labels, they have a fixed width or a fixed value. The vanilla and chocolate parts is actually our data, so that we know that. The only thing that I can play around with is just these pink parts. So I just calculated how big should be those parts so that in every row the sum is the same. And then if you calculated that, the only thing you need to do is just to insert, I used the 100% stacked bar chart. And if you use this one, you can just click on the right and on the left pink parts of the chart, make them transparent, and then here you go, you have created the butterfly chart, which is not a native chart in Excel, but you can see that even just with a few workarounds, you can create many, many different charts. So in any case, if you have questions, just drop them in the chat. Otherwise, I'll try to be fast and show you maybe at least one of these charts. So I already used the camera tool to show you something cool, but I'm going to make the camera tool even more dynamic. So in this case, we have our menu. Let me just get rid of one. And I want to create a solution so that if I change here the numbers, I want them changed as well on the menu, on the right side of this part. Now, basically, this is not a chart, but I still think that camera tool is very cool. So if you use the camera, you just need to highlight this part, go to the camera, insert this on the tab, and make sure that you always select no fill, no line. And you can see based on how I change the values, this is basically just a dynamic screenshot, so I will only always see the differences at the same time on the right side of my picture. Now, we can make it actually very dynamic. And in the next tab, I use the filter function. So we have our base data. I have now category, name, and price, and I made a helper column again with the subtotal. So in this case, the helper column helps me to display the values only if they are selected with the slicer. That's actually the main idea. Now, I created a filter function that filters out the values that are not selected. So based on the helper column and on the slicer, if I select here a category, I should see only these values here. So if we try, for example, dessert, I only see the desserts here. Now, the problem is sometimes it doesn't work. So let me just get rid of the old screenshot. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to select these cells, go to the camera tool, and then just insert this screenshot. The problem is this is not dynamic yet. If you click on some other, for example, soup, you see that I have now displayed here 5 rows, but I have data only in 2 of them. So the size of this dynamic screenshot of this camera snapshot is not changing. But as with many cases in Excel, there's a workaround. You can actually name this filter, name this dynamic array solution. So I'm going to go here to Formula tab, go to Name Manager, and I actually already did exactly. I already created a name for this array, for this range. Now you just have to make sure that if you select this cell, just use the hashtag in the end so that Excel knows that we are working here with a dynamic range. So if you know the name of it, like I think it was NM and filter, and if you created the screenshot, you can just go to the formula bar and then you see that Excel currently uses the cell address. Now, if we change this to name filter, this will be updated, and now I only see the 2 rows. I can place this on the menu and see if I select the main course, I see 5 rows. If I select soup, I only see 2 rows. So this is how you can make sure that your screenshot, what you did with the camera tool, stays dynamic. First of all, make sure that you have a name that you can use here. And second of all, you have to make sure that in the formula bar with the camera, with this screenshot, you use that name. And then you have a fully dynamic solution. We can take this actually to the next level. And one of my favorite workarounds with charts is to create fake charts. Now, what are fake charts? In our dashboard, I have created a few charts because if we're using charts in Excel, the problem could be that there are always something that we cannot change. So what if I want to use another color, and what if I want to use this combination? What if I want to use a table and spark lines next to it? I couldn't use a table and spark lines on top of a dashboard because the dashboard might have pictures in it, might have shapes in it, and the shapes are on top of the cells. So how do I deal with this? And we can use the camera tool to have this workaround solution. So basically, I created fake charts in my Excel cells. So you see I have the cities here, and I just used the wrap function to be able to draw a line. And I combined it with some formatting in some conditional formatting so that the highest will be green and the lowest should be pink. And if I select this little list, I can use the camera tool to create some kind of a chart. And I can put, since this is an object, I can put it on top of my dashboard. Because the problem with dashboards is, as soon as you use shapes, they are above the cells. So if you use pivot tables or normal tables and you want to show them on the dashboard, there's no way around it. You can take a screenshot with the camera tool and put this screenshot on top of the shapes and this is how you can make sure that the data is displayed even if it's not a chart. In the second example, I actually did the same. I used the wrapped function. I changed, and this is a very, very important step here, because it doesn't work with all of the font types. So I changed it to playbill so that it creates a kind of chart effect. And I also changed the alignment of the text, because if you use the wrapped function, it will look like this, so that the lines will go in the right direction, not upwards. So you need to change the alignment. And exactly, I changed it to 90 degrees so that these small signs next to each other will just go upwards. And if you again highlight this whole range, no, okay, somehow, yes. So if you highlight this whole range, you can use the camera tool to create a really dynamic screenshot again. So even if the data would change, you can see the changes on your dashboard again. And this is actually not a chart because we are working with cells, but it looks like a chart. So this is what I call a fake chart, and they are super flexible because you can create borders how you want. You can create, instead of the data labels, you can just put the values below these small data, small charts. You can also just write down the city names. You can basically do anything you can with a cell and just screenshot it to the dashboard. And that makes this solution very, very dynamic and flexible. And if you want to take it to the next level, I created here 4 checkboxes, and based on which you click, maybe you can select or deselect all of them. I mean, you should at least select one of them, but based on how many you select, I just created here a filter function, which only shows you the data if the checkbox is activated. And then you can again use the small workaround. So what I did here is I created here a name. It's the name chart data tree. And it just takes this dynamic range. And if you use this with the camera tool, and if you take a screenshot from it, and you change this name again to this dynamic name that you just created, then based on how many checkboxes I activate, this screenshot will be always brighter or narrower, but it will be always updated based on the checkboxes in Excel. So this is a very cool way, again, to make sure that our charts stay dynamic. And you can create many, many fake charts in Excel. This is just like 3 small examples what we could do. Now, maybe there is time for our last workaround. I mean, this is very special one, so to say, and this is something that I don't use every day, but I still think it's cool because it combines PowerPoint a little bit with Excel. So this is what I call the cut trick. So in this example, if you click on the cell I5, you see that there is a drop down where you can select either last 6 months or last year or last month. Now, based on the selection, the data will be updated, and we have also some arrows here. I did that all with picture in cell, and I connected the text boxes to the cells. So there is nothing new. The only thing new is that I have here a shape, and it looks like that on top of the shape, I have a drop down. Now you could use either this drop down from the developer. The only problem is that it's kind of, I don't think it's really nice looking. So I like to find solutions in Excel that look really nice. So in this case, I actually have a cell below this shape, and I'm using the cell with a drop down. Now, how did I do that? If you move this small picture around, you can actually see that there is a place that has been cut out from the shape. And if you use PowerPoint, because this is the only thing that you cannot do with Excel, but you can use PowerPoint to cut some parts out of a shape. So exactly. So let me just go to PowerPoint very quickly. So this is what I did. I just created a shape. You can change the background color and everything. And then you can create a second shape from the cell. So let me just really quickly show you what I mean. So we see the differences. Exactly. So if I have two shapes in PowerPoint, I can select both of them, and then you have a solution, like an option in PowerPoint, which is called Merge Shapes. Now, if you go to Subtract, you just need to make sure that the order in which you selected the shape is correct. But basically, you can cut out some parts, some shapes of another shape. So first of all, I selected the green one, like the background first. And then as a second one, I selected the part that I want to cut out. And now if I go to merge shapes and I select subtract, I have the exact same shape. And if I insert it into Excel, put it in the right position, I can now use my drop down from the cell and have a really nice looking dashboard as well. And I know we're a little bit late, so just very quickly, because this is actually a longer solution, but you can use something very similar that I actually saw within Power BI dashboards, that if you want to make sure that you have these dots, or in my case, I just selected hearts, based on my slicer, there will be nice little symbols next to the values, and they have this really cool color ombre effect, I would say. I don't think we have time to go over it, but you have the solution in Excel. So if you have any questions, then just text me on LinkedIn and I can show you how I did it. But I also only used the ideas of cutting out a part from
Lara,
an object.
we have time to stay if you have time to show it. So if you do want to walk through it, by all means do so. If you'd prefer to take questions on LinkedIn after, that's totally fine too. But this is more about your schedule than it is mine, because people can always come back and watch the recording afterwards. So I know I'm deadly curious. I'm sure others are. So if you've got time, we'd love to see it.
Okay, sure. Yeah, because this is something that I really like, and I saw it on LinkedIn for Power BI again, and I thought it would be so cool to build this in Excel. So gladly. So what I did there, you don't need to use the heart shapes. You can actually use a circle, which makes it much more business-like. I just like to use heart filters. So we have a table here. Actually, we do have a table on the next sheet. And this is something that I connected to the slicer. So if I use the slicer here, the table on the next sheet will be filtered. And I again have a help column with a subtotal function so that I know which of the values, which of the products are chosen or filtered out. Now, the important thing is that in the results, I use the sort and the filter function to kind of find the values that have been chosen from the table. And in this table, actually, in this list in the results, let me just move a few things around. I have one column that is completely, it's just actually a color scale where the values are hidden. So I use conditional formatting and I use some color scales. And then as a second step, I got rid of the numbers. So I changed the formatting so that you cannot see the values there. The second step in my workaround was to create a range that has the exact same numbers of rows that we do have in the table that is filtered out. So I just created with the help of the sequence function, we always have the same amount of hearts that we have in the filtered list. And then using the screenshot solution again, I used the camera tool to take a screenshot from this heart range, let's just say that, and I layered it on top of the conditional formatting column. Now the problem is that it completely blinds it, so we cannot see anything from the conditional formatting. So first of all, I selected here no fill and no line, but I still can see the colors behind it. And there is a small trick, again, with the transparency or cutting out, more or less, that you can do with objects in Excel. If you go to the picture format and then you go to the tab, to the button color, you have this option set transparent color. And if you click on it, you need to really make sure that you click on the black hearts. And in the moment that you do it, you see that we basically just cut out the black hearts. So the white part of the cell is still there to block it out, the rest of the conditional formatting. But the hearts are now kind of cut out and I can see the color behind it, which is what I did with my conditional formatting. Now this looks great, but it is not dynamic, because if I select the slicer, my screenshots, this camera tool is still way too long. So I have to make sure that it has the right length. Now, I did the same trick that I showed you before. So I named this range because it only has the length that I need. So the name is under the name formula tab, name manager. And exactly, the name is nm points. Just make sure that you have the hashtag in the end if you name this range. And in the last step, I just changed the ranges from the formula bar from ranges to the name points. And then it always has the same size that we actually need. And the rest of the steps is to make sure that the alignment is really perfect. So probably usually I add some white line to it so that it looks a little bit more polished. And we just have to make sure exactly that those colors are a little bit outside of the part. And when it's perfect, you can try out the solution. You select something else from the slicer, and you see if you change from main course to soup, these hearts are always shown, and they always have the same amount of rows below. So this is a fully dynamic and perfect solution, something that is much easier in Power BI, but it's also very, very much possible in Excel. And if you use circles instead of hearts, then it's a very professional looking solution as well. Basically, I just changed here the formatting from the cells. So I just created some values here and then changed the formatting to hearts. But if you select here dots or circles, it works the same. Yeah, so that would be the last example that I prepared for today. And I see that from also on the time, we're a little bit beyond 8. Exactly. Do you have any type of questions to the charts or to the workarounds that I showed you?
I'm just going to say, holy cow, that was amazing. That is some really, really cool stuff. And I have to say that, well, I don't know, I'm speechless, and that doesn't happen very often, Laura. So well done. Great presentation.
Thank you.
And the comments that I see coming into the chat are fairly positive, except for Balji, who objects to plain old Excel. Why? I love Excel. I love seeing what can happen in this thing. I mean, it's the beauty of it. It's such an incredible tool to be able to do so many wild things. And I wish certain things were easier like they are in Power BI, but the fact that we can still do them in Excel is absolutely incredible. And there is no question here, Laura, that you are an absolute master of being able to do some very, very cool stuff. So thank you so much for coming and spending your time with us and sharing these tricks. It's incredible.
Yeah, thank you. It was a pleasure to work with these examples. I hope that it was fun for you as well. And I know it was a lot, and maybe I was a little bit fast on some examples, but you all have the workbooks. Every solution is there. So in your time, you can just take your time, go through it, and if you have questions, you can just let me know.
There you go. Just to make sure this gets in the recording, Balji just clarified their comment. Objects to the term plain old Excel because it's so powerful. Cool. That I'll buy into. So, yeah. Will the presentation and recording be shared afterwards? Yes, it will, Jessica. Give me about 24 to 48 hours to get it produced, and it'll get up onto the YouTube channel. As soon as it does, we will post a note in the Meetup chat as well, so that you can actually go and be notified of it there if you're not subscribed to the channel. In addition, all of the intro slides for my stuff are up there, and the example files from Laura's presentation, everything that she showed you, is actually already there, so you can download it and play through there and try and replicate these things on your own. So I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of people spending some busy time in Excel today trying to make their things look better. So there you go. And on that note, again, Laura, thanks once again for coming and doing this. I think we'll wrap up for today. So thank you everyone for coming. Don't forget, we got a couple of great sessions coming up as well with Helen Wall and Lee Becker that are open for RSVPs. So hopefully we'll see you at the next one. And until next time.